All right. I call to order the meeting of the Centralina Regional Council Executive Board. On behalf of the team at Centralina, I'd like to thank all of you for your active participation on the executive board and for providing the organization with guidance and support as we move throughout the year. As I'm sure you've noticed, Geraldine's not with us today. She is on, which I'm sure is a very needed leave. We're excited to welcome Michelle Nance here, though, Centralina's Deputy Executive Director, So moving right along to the roll call, as a reminder, executive board meetings are held with a virtual option. We encourage you to be here in person, but it is more important that we have your participation regardless of the format. This meeting is being recorded. To facilitate the virtual presentation, all delegates attending both virtually and in person are asked to state their name before making a motion, a second, voting, or posing a question or comment. Because we have delegates attending both in person and remotely, I'd like the board administrators to call the roll so everyone is aware of who's present and we can establish the forum. Names will be called in alphabetical order by the last name. So now I'll ask her to call the roll.
Patty Crump, Evan Deminy, Martha Sue Hall. Present. Okay, Jamie Hamil, Felina Harris,
Present.
Brian Helms, Daryl Hennett, Jean Hout, Bob Hovis, Corinthia Lewis Lemon, Corinthia Lewis Lemon, Jamie Lineberger, sorry, I had to wait because I know some people were on it or not. Wait 1 second. Tony Long,
Present.
Jay Kosh,
Here. Wow.
Martin Molina, Elaine Powell, Sean Rush,
Present.
David Scholl,
Here.
Lynn Shu, Jennifer Stepp, Jennifer T, Jarvis Woodburn.
Here.
Full.
All right. So we have confirmed that we have a quorum. So now, let's please stand and recite the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so now, there are no amendments to the June 12th, 2024 Centralina Executive Board meeting agenda, so now we'll move on to items 1 through 6, which are on the consent. The consent agenda includes 6 items tonight. Number 1 is the approval of the April 10th Executive Board meeting minutes. The second is an amendment to the fiscal year 23-24 budget. 3 is the Finance Committee authorization. 4th is the Home and Community Care Block Grant. 5 is the Brownfield grant approval. And finally, the Timber Road Extension Grant Agreement. And all these information on each is available in your agenda packets. Are there any comments on the consent agenda?
Martha Sue move approval of the consent agenda as prepared.
I'll second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving right along to item number 7. So this year is the Centralina Spotlight, Small Towns Initiative Recap and Impact. This year, we will continue to spotlight one of Centralina's programs at the start of each of our executive board meetings. It's a great opportunity to continue to build our knowledge of what Centralina does and how its programs, services, and activities support our local governments and constituents. Today, the focus is on our Government Affairs Member Engagement Department, or GAME for short. After this short video, John Holmes, Government Affairs and Member Engagement Specialist, will answer any questions or concerns. John.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Holmes, Government Affairs and Member Engagement Specialist here at Centralina. We're pleased to announce that we're bringing back the Centralina Regional Council's Region of Excellence Awards for this year. So without further ado, we do have a video coming up.
Centralina is pleased to announce that we're kicking off another year of the Region of Excellence Awards. For those of you new to Centralina, this annual program is just one way that Centralina works to encourage collaboration throughout the region, while also taking the time to celebrate the hard work and successes of our region's local governments. By now you're asking, what are the categories? We have 6, which are related to our mission and the work we do in the region. 2 potential awards will be given in each category, one for larger and one for smaller jurisdictions. Let's walk through those categories. First, there's Aging in Action. This award seeks to highlight those taking the lead in helping our region's community members age with choice, dignity, and independence. The late Shirley Wiggins was celebrated with this award in 2021 for her decades of tireless advocacy in service of the region's aging adults and peoples with disabilities. This category is open to nonprofits, local government,
You narrate the rest of these, right?
individuals. The Clean Cities and Communities Award highlights those supporting the integration of sustainable, innovative, and resilient clean mobility projects. Last year's award winner was UNC Charlotte's Energy Production and Infrastructure Center for its role in the pole vault curbside vehicle charging project. This category is open to nonprofits, local governments, and stakeholder organizations. The cross-community collaboration category highlights those who are working to build stronger communities through strong partnerships, cooperation, and communication. A prior winner was Lake Norman Economic Development for its work on the Journey 360 program to help address workforce gaps. This category is open to local governments and stakeholder organizations who must submit with a local government partner. The Improving Quality of Life Award celebrates communities that demonstrate their commitment to building great places where people can live, work, play, and thrive. One of the previous winners was the City of Statesville for its Downtown Improvement Project. This category is only open to local governments. The Local Government Innovation Award seeks to highlight the creative and innovative responses that our governments do when asked to do more with less. These awardees are doing work that is creative, innovative, and valuable to its communities. A prior recipient was the City of Charlotte for its Placemaking Grant Program. This category is only open to local governments. The Excellence in Government Leadership Award recognizes transformative local government leadership, leaders that inspire trust, build confidence, and motivate others. 2 recent award winners were Town Manager Jonathan Blatton, given for a small community, and County Manager Mike Downs, given for a larger community. This category is only open to local government employees. The nomination period is now open and will remain open through August 16th. A celebration to announce the award winners will take place on October 9th at the Atrium Health Ballpark in Kannapolis. The nomination process is simple. Simply visit www.regionofexcellence.com, fill out the short online form, and submit any supporting documentation. On this page, you can also read more about the past winners you've seen featured here. Make sure to share this opportunity with your local government staff. Award winners will be featured on our website and monthly newsletter.
Thank you guys for playing that. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Just happy to answer or talk about anything. All right.
Well, thank you very much, John.
My pleasure.
All right, moving right along. To item 8 on the agenda, which is the state and federal relations update. I'm now calling Kelly Weston, Centralina for the share state updates, but then she's going to introduce Chris Wall, who's Centralina's legislative consultant, to share his thoughts on possible legislative activities with the board. But last but not least, Leslie Mazinga, of Strategic Consultants, will finish up an update on Centralina's federal government engagement activities and present the April-May Strategic Consulting Performance Report. Kelly, all yours.
Mr. Chairman. So good evening. In this presentation, we will share an update on the short session. Chris will do that in just a moment.
but then also kind of give you an update on what we've done so far with our state advocacy activities for the short session, as well as kind of where we're going to be headed in preparation for the upcoming long session in 2025. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris to give us the view from Raleigh. Chris?
Hey, thanks, Kelly, and Mr. Chair, thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure to join the Centralina board and members. Things are a little crazy in Raleigh right now. If you've seen any of the news coming out of the state capitol, we are in the throes of budget negotiations between the House and the Senate, and we've hit a little bit of a snag. The House and Senate are at odds with each other on some of the final pieces of the larger spending items that they want to tackle. The big ticket items that are driving the conversation this session are opportunity scholarships, Medicaid expansion, reimbursement payments, a few other items that are related to some capital projects around the state. And then they have to get into member projects, which are always the last thing that the House and Senate deals with before presenting a budget to the people and to the government. To the governor, and they haven't quite gotten to that because they're still stuck on some top line spending numbers. They've been stuck for a few weeks now, although there has been a little bit of progress made this week. But until the Senator Berger and Speaker Moore can get some capital project agreements, we're at a little bit of a stalemate right now. And because we've hit this stalemate, tensions are a little high. The House and the Speaker has said they're going to move forward with their own independent budget, which could be released as early as next week. I don't think that will happen. I think if that is the course that the House continues to move, that we're looking at 2 or 3 weeks before we could see them produce a budget product. Meanwhile, the Senate has said that we've got a budget in place, and they're fine to just go home for the session and campaign and come back in 2025. This is fairly par for the course for the General Assembly. We kind of see this little ebb and flow routinely in the General Assembly. That it does seem to be a little more personal this go around, but my prediction would be we're going to go into the Father's Day weekend, and people are going to go to the Big Rock and to the U.S. Open, and we'll come back and they'll be in a little better spirits, and we'll get some movement over the next couple of weeks. July is going to be, there's a lot of demands on members' schedule in July. So if I had to tell you when we could expect a budget, I think it's probably mid-August is when you could see a House and Senate passed budget that would go to the governor. I will tell you that the governor is not supportive of putting additional funding into opportunity scholarships, and the House and Senate have agreed to do that. So I think the governor, and this is just my opinion, I haven't spoken to the governor's staff and he hasn't said anything public, but I think the writing on the wall is with this type of increased funding for opportunity scholarships, we're talking $300-400 million, that the governor would likely veto the budget on that issue alone. So we've got a ways to go before we get the 25 budget in place. The House and Senate, they have a little under $1 billion in surplus this session to spend, and there's some must-do priorities that both bodies would like to get addressed this session before they adjourn this year's sine die for Christmas. So I think cooler heads will prevail a little later in the year. It's just not going to be quite as short as everybody was hoping it would be going into this session. Other than the budget, there hasn't been a lot of substantive items coming out of the General Assembly to date. We've seen some little issues here and there. There was a bill moving today that would change the appointment situation for the DMV commissioner and give more power to the General Assembly, less power to the governor. As far as that appointment is concerned, those items typically end up in a courtroom. There was a mask bill that passed the Senate 2 weeks ago that has been rewritten in the House, and it would make wearing a mask in public illegal except for the prevention or spread of disease, or if you were sick, it would make wearing a mask if you were protesting illegal, and that's in response to some of the war in Gaza protests that we've seen across our campuses over the last few months. But other than that, not a lot that impacts the COG directly. We continue to work on our issues that for both Centralina and the association, the COG association statewide, that we're looking pretty good on those. I'm cautiously optimistic. However, in the budget process, we haven't gotten to the point where they're discussing our issues as well. But we've got a lot of local elected official support, and we've got our state electeds that have made the request and are pushing our agenda. So, Kelly, with that, I think that's pretty much the view from Raleigh right now, and happy to answer any questions or talk about anything that I didn't mention.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Chairman, just for the back over the board, are there any questions that anyone has for Chris?
Questions for Chris or Kelly?
I got one. Are there any questions, I mean, any discussions going on right now about transportation in the state, specifically in the Charlotte region?
So it's interesting. Are there discussions? Yes, right, because it is a topic of discussion, and it's something that continues to kind of work in the background. I can tell you that as of today, there have been no requests made by, or at least according to the folks that I've spoken to, there have been no specific requests from the city of Charlotte. The folks are aware of the actions that the county and the city took, I think, a couple of weeks ago. But I don't expect anything this session. There's not going to be a finance or tax package, or there is no plan right now to have a tax or finance package out of the General Assembly this session. So I think if the General Assembly were to take action, it most likely would be next session.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I do just have a few points that we wanted to share with you all. In terms of our advocacy in the short session, this is a timeline of what we've done and what we're planning to do as we prepare for the long session in 2025. So just to recap what we've done so far, back in April, we began meeting with legislators and reaching out to meet with them. We actually had a really good meeting with Representative Autry, who represents Charlotte or Mecklenburg County. He's actually not running for re-election in the fall, but he did at that meeting bring with him Julia Greenfield, who is running uncontested for his seat. So we were able to begin doing some relationship building there during that meeting. In May, we began tracking some of the bills. As Chris noted, there hasn't been a lot of activity, but we just kind of wanted to see what has been introduced. And so we started looking at those. Looking ahead for September, we're going to bring back to you all some points for discussion around some priorities for the 2025 long session. And then in October, we're planning to invite state legislators to attend the Board of Delegates meeting. So it'll be an opportunity for you all to do some networking with them. And then in November, we want to follow up on that discussion on long session priorities at the November executive board meeting. So that's kind of what we're looking towards doing. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions kind of about the timeline. Yes.
In that October meeting, we're inviting legislators, going to be really, really tight on their time since there's an election in November.
It will be. And Chris, if you want to speak to this, as far as I know, we've talked about before about having kind of getting in front of legislators or inviting them to things as they're campaigning and preparing going into the election. We thought that would, at least extending that invitation for an opportunity would be a good idea to bring them to that October board meeting.
Yeah, I agree. As you're heading into an election, elected officials and folks in the room know that, any chance that you can get to address multiple folks in one setting is appealing and is welcomed by them, and they appreciate the effort of getting them in front of their constituents and giving them an ability to speak on the issues that, you guys want to talk about and they would like to talk about as well. So I think it's good timing, and I think it should be well received.
And follow up to that, Martha Sue, and if I look at this calendar, the November meeting is actually on November 13th, which is, it's 8 days after the election. I think that we will have more folks in attendance in October if we invite them in October. But I think and I should know this and I don't, though I do know that all 140 seats are up for reelection or up for election. Some have already been determined. Okay, in the House, but in the House and the Senate. It would be interesting to see how many of them in our region are currently contested. I mean, some folks we know are going right back in because they won their primary. So it may not be, David, to your comment, we may not have as many as we think we might have there because some have already been won. However, I'll go back on the record and say that, in our 9 counties, we have a majority of both houses coming out of our 9 counties, which is really crazy. It's not a majority, but if it's not a majority, it's right there with, with the Wake area, so.
That's all we have for the state update. I'll turn it over to Leslie for the federal update.
Thanks, Kelly. Hey, Chris, good to see you on the big screen.
Hi, Leslie.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
So, tonight I mainly wanted to cover a couple of quick things. You get 2 reports. Normally you have the performance report, which is on page 104 in your packet. And then in addition to that, it's that time of year, starting on page 105, when you also get an annual report. So you actually have, those 2 in this particular meeting that's a little bit different. The main comments I want to make, and as you know, I don't take up your time reading through them. I assume you've read them or you will read them and you'll reach out if you have questions, and my contact information is always on them. But the main thing that I wanted to kind of highlight for you in terms of the performance report is a number of things that we've been working on. We did provide the information that the Mayor Pro Tem Martha Sue Hall had asked for. That should have been published, I believe, or distributed in terms of the changes in congressional districting and what that'll look like in terms of offices. But the other thing that we ended up having to work on pretty diligently is working with Congresswoman Adams' office. Some funding that was received in an award for the North Mecklenburg Housing Initiative got stuck by HUD, and it was really becoming where they were assigning people and then those people weren't there. Anyway, it was very, very convoluted. But so the good news is that has been released. That funding has finally been released, and so Congresswoman Adams gets a lot of credit for that. Her staff was really tenacious in terms of staying on that. And they have, they've already asked, when can we go see the project? When can we get involved? So we've told them it's not not there yet, but we'll keep them informed. The other thing that I wanted to touch on really goes into the annual report. And, a number of years ago, when we first started this process of federal advocacy, one of the things that I said to everybody is, you're going to have to give this a little bit of time, because the first thing we have to do is explain what a COG is. We knew that on Capitol Hill, folks did not understand, what a council of government looked like, what it did, what its responsibilities were. And so really for the first year and well up, into years after that, second year more, and we kept building on it. Linda's great work, with the area agencies on aging and overlapping those meetings and making those contacts and having the August advocacy that you all have been involved in year after year. The thing that I have found really encouraging this particular year is the number of times that not only folks reached out and said, hey, can I come to your office and meet with you? I want to hear the latest, talking about coming over to meet with Geraldine. Or my favorite was twice now. I've been present in other meetings with nobody from Centralina present, where Senate staff specifically talked about Centralina and the great work that they're doing and how innovative they are and all of these other things. And we've seen congressional offices reaching out to the different departments, to Michelle and again, Linda and others, saying, we're going to be doing a little meeting or a summit in our congressional office locally. Can you come over and be one of our panelists? So the thing that I think that I have found, like I said, to be most encouraging is that we're well past now. I'll say this with a caveat. We will have to do some new education, right? After the elections, we're going to have several new members coming in representing this region. So we will have to start over, but in that regard, but, just like take the Senate offices, for example, I mean, these folks are very familiar with the work that's being done and they love the focus on regionalism. And so I just want to encourage everyone from the elected officials on the board, to all of the great staff working for Centralina, to keep up the good work, because everything that everyone is doing has really elevated this organization. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I can tell you honestly, there was a time when, I would have to explain it. Nobody would say, oh, Centralina, you just the great things they're doing when y'all weren't in the room. Okay. So I did want to point that out. And again, there's more information in those reports. I'm always happy, but if not tonight, another time, you can reach out, text me, email me, call me. I'm happy to answer any questions. In terms of federal activities going on, and somehow I always seem to go out of order. I apologize. I always start with the reports. But anyway, in the general Washington scheme of things, just to give a report there, they are starting to move on appropriations. The House and the Senate for that matter, but the House has already laid out a timeline for getting all of their appropriation bills done as single legislation, with the hopes of finishing by August, sending it to the Senate side to do their work. What that means for all of you is that I just want to warn you, this year won't be as bad as the future years, but it's starting to move that direction. Definitely talk with your departments and make sure you're aware of the programs on which your communities rely, and don't be shy about weighing in with your members of Congress to say, I know you're getting into the spending bills, and I just want you to know we really need you to protect fill in the blank. And there might be, a list of 4 or 5. Maybe you send them a letter, maybe you send them an email. But go ahead and be thinking about that protection side. We have been in many years of trillion-dollar bills and infrastructure packages and the ability to, to spend extra dollars from ARPA and otherwise. But the bill tightening is coming, and you really want to be familiar with those programs so that you can help protect that funding that goes to your community. So I did want to, point that out. The other thing that I wanted to remind everybody is that we do put out a weekly grants alert. We're still putting that out. That's all the new grants that come from week to week. And it's already been filtered out for things that work for local governments and for, maybe some, public connections or shareholders that work for local governments. So sometimes there's nonprofits and public housing initiatives in there, but we will note that if a public housing authority or another nonprofit or an academic institution will help your chances, that's usually noted in that alert. And so that goes out every week. Please encourage your communities to be watching for that, because that's part of your membership benefits, that you're getting free of charge. And then keep in mind that Centralina offers grant services. So if writing is a challenge for you in terms of your opportunities, internally to respond to these grants, or you're just having trouble sort of deciphering if your project is really the best fit, my motto always, you'll hear me beating people over the head with it, is it's not good enough to be eligible, you have to be competitive. And so if you were looking and trying to decide whether to put your resources into something, reach out to Centralina, ask for their help, because they do have that expertise and they will rely on folks like Chris and myself to, to answer some of those questions. In addition to the weekly alert, twice a year, we put out what's called an annual forecast, where we take all the grants that we've been publicizing for the last year and we put it in one massive document, and it is massive. But it is an ability, for, a searchable document with keywords where you can look up grants And again, go back to your departments and say, hey, look through this list again. Maybe we missed something on a weekly alert that's in this master document. And again, all of these things are coming to you as a benefit of membership. So I just want to make sure that I remind you of that. Those are my quick reports, Mr. Chairman. And I'm happy to answer any questions, like I said, this evening, or otherwise reach out to me.
Any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. Leslie, Kelly, Chris. All right. May I have a motion to approve the strategic consulting performance report for April and May 2024, along with the 23-24 annual report?
I'll make my own motion to approve.
All right, second.
John, second.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passed. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along to item number 9, which is our fiscal year 24-25 work plan review and approval. I'm going to now call on Michelle Nance, the Centralina Deputy Director, to provide a briefing on the proposed fiscal year 24-25 work.
Thank you, and good evening. I should ask Mark to see to fill my plate next time.
Doris is a growing boy, let me tell you.
I'm growing up with.
Well, thank you. We're really excited about the work plan for this coming year. And we're not going to go through this line by line, but just want to hit a few high points. One thing I want you to take away from this is that we are on the 3rd year of our strategic plan. So when Geraldine came in, we did a ton of engagement with elected officials, with y'all, our communities, our key stakeholders, to really find out what the needs are. You know, we needed that refresh. And so once we learned what the needs were, we developed 4 goals that really kind of built all of our vision and our mission that you see here. And those 4 goals relate to the region, relate to the local governments, relate to our person-centered services, so the individual services such as what aging provides and workforce development. Those are very kind of person-to-person type services. And then also kind of looking internally, how can we be more efficient? How can we improve on operations internally? So that's kind of the 4 big goals. Each year when we do a work plan, we're really implementing this strategic plan. And you'll see as we go through, there's a few things we've had to shift because after 2 years, we've actually completed quite a few things. And so we had to make a few adjustments to move on to the next. So the 4 goals that you saw, the way our work plan works is that we take the goals, we look at, hey, there's some core services that always happens. But then there's some new money that comes in, there's some new projects and programs, and we call those our strategies. You take a look at that, that becomes our annual work plan. It's very similar to what your local governments do every year. You pass the budget, there's a work plan for the things that you want to get accomplished. Just a few highlights from this year. Every department at Centralina has core services, things that you just do that aren't necessarily highlighted in the work plan, but it's just the types of things, whether it's convening, whether it's educational sessions, those types of things that you typically take that Centralina does. So I'm just going to hit just a few high points here. Going through the 4 key areas, one on the region, of course, we're going to continue to implement some of our big plans. So our economic development strategy for the region, our mobility plan for the region, we'll continue our work on that. But this year, we're also looking to launch something called a brownfields program. And really what that is a lot of our, especially smaller communities, have a ton of buildings that maybe were used for an older mill. Maybe they were used for laundry, maybe they were used for a gas station, and they are in key locations. And they're not being able to be used or not creating tax value right now. And so the brownfields program will help local governments take a look at that, understand what is that next best step and what's the issue? What chemicals need to be mitigated at the site for the communities. So we're really, really happy about that. just a couple more. We always want to look at emerging trends that are impacting the region. And as you just heard, there's going to be a ton of new legislators, both on the Raleigh side and on the federal side. And we've got to put our local governments to grow those relationships because that really means a lot when our local governments can get funding. On the local government side, you'll hear a little bit more about this in just a minute, but we have grown our outreach to smaller communities. And we will continue to do that in the next year. Hear about some successes that we just learned about. Also, we'll do some local pilot projects with businesses, folks that have had issues getting their employees to their site. We're going to work with them on some different ideas about how they can get people to and from. You've also heard about the grant work that we do. We'll be kind of restructuring that and doing clear local governments, what services we're all offered. And then we'll continue our ARPA support. ARPA is going to be ending, and we've got to make sure that our communities have been reporting, that they're ready to go, and that they are trying to actively fill those funds. So we'll be reaching out on that. And then we hear this from local governments all around our workforce board. Employee attraction and retention, obviously, it's a big deal for businesses, but also for local. On the service to individual side, there's a ton of core services that workforce development and aging do all the time. But there are some new programs that are coming on board, especially related to veteran interests and housing. So we're really excited about that. And also because some of the shifts in ARPA and other federal funding sources, we will be looking internally at what are the ways that we grow revenues to support what we know local governments need in those areas. And then on internal operations, we've had to make a few adjustments because we've been successful in completing many of our tasks. So we've been hearing a lot about IT security. We've got to look internally and make sure we're really where we need to be. We'll be looking at all of our physical assets. You have to do that, if we were ever to have an emergency, we hear from Christine all the time. We've got to have that stuff documented, making sure our cars are like they need to be. And so all of that, we're actually diving into artificial intelligence, and I'm trying to understand what is it and how can local governments use it. We've got a committee together right now that Geraldine is leading, talking with local governments about how they're using it. And so we'll probably end up with some sort of guidance to local governments. They might be gathered for that. And then, of course, succession planning, right? As Linda would say, who's aging? We're all aging. And as people age and they get more experience, they may tend to move on. What does that mean for an organization that is people focused? It means we have to be thinking about that. So those are just a few highlights. Of course, every quarter we'll be coming back to you to report on how it's going. At the end of the year, we do a annual work plan, so you'll get to see that. And then since we're in year 3, starting in the winter, we will be thinking about, hey, what are the next 3 years? So that's really exciting, and we're just so happy for your support and through the year, and we would love for you to say yes to our ability to do what we want to do in this work plan.
Well, thank you. Is there any questions for Michelle on the work plan?
Motion to approve the 24-25 work plan as proposed.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much, Michelle. Now we're moving right along to item number 10, which is the in-focus discussion of small towns initiative. So this is the last item on the agenda tonight. The in-focus discussion on the initiative recap and impact. For this item, I will call again on Michelle Nance and Kelly Weston to lead the discussion on the initiative.
Thank you. I'm just going to hit a couple of slides that give you the big picture of why we are working very strategically with our small towns. And then Kelly is going to give you a little more detail about what we did in the last year, what its impact was, and where we're going to be going forward. So as you can see here, I just thought I love these kind of statistics, over 60% of our communities in the region are under 10,000. That's a lot, but over 55% are under 5,000. Like, that is really small. And, when I go to like regional conferences, national conferences, and I talk about, Charlotte region, I know that people have one thing in their mind, but I very quickly remind them like who we really are. And we are a lot of communities that are very different. And as you see here, I mean, the diversity in size is just maybe kind of surprising to folks when we talk about that. You recall that we just had our 55th anniversary, and through that, we met with a ton of local government and actually got to speak with them about what were their needs, what do they want, what do they think that Centralina could help them with. And even though all of our communities are very unique, we started to see some real themes about what the smaller communities need, because they typically have a smaller staff, smaller budgets, and just smaller resources all the way around. So we also had some engagement with y'all several times ago, close to a year ago, where we talked about the need of small towns. So with all of that, we set out to look at, okay, what can we do in FY24 to really start this process? And so it really, our program contains 3 parts. The first one was education sessions and resources. And the guidebook that you see here is just an example of some of the takeaways that local governments were able to receive. So every time we did a session, they got even more detail that they could take back with them that went beyond what they heard in the presentation, and really more about a how-to guide, how they could get started on whatever the topic was of the day. We heard from our local governments that they, especially the clerks, interestingly enough, in a lot of small towns, it's the clerk and not getting more folks, right? They knew the clerks or administrators in their county, but they did not know people across the region. And if you think about it, you may be a smaller community on one side and you have very similar issues and challenges and opportunities as you do with someone on the other side. So through this peer-to-peer networking, we were able to help them kind of meet other people like them and understand, like, what did y'all do? So that's been really interesting. And then the third piece of that was direct services. So as I said, small towns. So if they had a need, they needed something done, where could we help? So Kelly's going to talk about a little more detail about what we're able to do.
So you may be familiar with our Centralina Learned, our professional development series. This year, we were really intentional about making sure that we were covering topics that were going to be relevant to, of course, communities of all sizes, but especially to our smaller communities as well. So these are some of the topics we were able to cover this year: artificial intelligence, strategic planning, really focused on strategic plan implementation, grants, and then transportation. And so, as Michelle just mentioned, our small towns peer-to-peer new for this year, that was really a series of bi-monthly virtual sessions that were focused on local government topics, but looking at them through a small town lens. So we had 4 sessions this year. We covered community engagement, kind of an overview of strategic planning, so a companion to the session we did in February for Centralina Learns. Social media, thank you to our in-house communications expert, Emily. And then HR policies, really focused on personnel and operations policies. And also we're able to leverage our in-house expertise with Benicia White, our HR manager there. So this map shows the communities that participated in the peer-to-peer series. So you can see there's kind of a good mix across the region there. And so when we kind of assessed the impact of the peer-to-peer series, there were a few things that we kind of noted as like successes. And one would be, and Michelle just kind of talked about this, that those one-on-one connections, being able to connect with peers that were across the region that, staff may not have connected with before, may not have I've had a chance to meet before. Expanded engagement, so we were able to see some engagement and participation from communities that had not previously been as involved in the organization before. So we always consider that a win when we're able to bring in folks and encourage more participation there. And then also, as Michelle mentioned, staff that were not able to get away from the office for training, this provided them with an opportunity to get some training that really fit into their schedule. So seeing some engagement there. And then as just noted on that map, a good geographic mix from across the region, but also from a mix of small communities. So the smallest of our small communities, and then some smaller communities are a little bit on the larger end of the small community spectrum. And then there's a quote here provided by actually our town manager in the town of Spencer, just recapping kind of his experience with the session, and his staff participated in a couple of the peer-to-peer sessions. And again, like, I think for us, this is really where we see the value, noting that it's bringing some value and having an impact on our members. And so in addition to those education pieces, the peer-to-peer, the resources that we provided, again, the direct services that we offered for small towns included some formal financial administration training to really help prepare for recovering from disasters. Again, some grant strategies to help communities come up with some approaches to pursuing funding opportunities. HR assistance that we helped with recruiting for positions, as well as some personnel policy reviews. And then also we helped some communities with some direct support with strategic planning.
And so one thing we do have to mention, so the National Association of Regional Councils every year has an award ceremony, and we just found out this week that Centralina is in the major metros, so we're in there with the big regions, and we won an award, one of the small towns Spotlight initiative. So we're very proud of the team for doing that.
Any questions for Kelly or Michelle? We're just gonna be receiving this as information. And if you have any questions on it, please. All right, thank you guys very much. Moving right along, coming down to the wire here. So now we are doing our closing comments. Are there any closing comments from the executive board? Anybody online? Anybody?
Great supper. Right, Jarvis?
Right. Well, we thank Carissa for that. And you guys online are missing out. Just letting you know, you're missing out by not coming. All right, thank you guys. Michelle, please share any closing comments you might have.
Just want to say thank you, and we have heard from North Carolina that we have done really well with our communities in terms of reporting. Even nationally, North Carolina is situated very well, and even in our region, we are almost at the 100% mark, almost, for reporting. So just thank y'all for everything you do to make sure that money flows.
All right, well, thank you. And I promise I will, it is 5:52. I promise I'm not gonna take 8 minutes. So we will be out in less than an hour, which I think is the record. I don't have everything here for less than an hour. All right, but please be on the lookout for your upcoming membership newsletters. You, along with the finance director, city or town manager, will be copied on this correspondence. Any questions arise, please reach out to Denise Strasser, the Centralina Finance Director.